Goldsboro Union Station. It was built in 1909. Architect was Leitner and Wilkins from Wilmington, North Carolina. Our project here is to refurbish and restore this building so that it can be used by the city of Goldsboro for conferences and meetings. Eventually the building will be repurposed again to what it was originally as a train station when we reestablish rail traffic from Goldsboro to Raleigh. Now, this side of the building was the front that faced Carolina Avenue, and we're going to be refurbishing the entire exterior of the building, cleaning the brick, making repairs to anything that's been damaged. All of the original windows will be retained and restored. We know what all the original paint colors were, and we'll be painting the new finishes on the existing wood with all the original paint colors. This center of the building originally had what's called a porte cochere, which was a covered roof that came out closer to the street, and horses and buggies would pull up under this original paving right here and be able to discharge passengers in and out of the building. The building was set up originally so that there was it was segregated. The white passengers at this side of the building and the African American passengers at that side, but they had a common ticket area in there and a common path that went out to the train. This building originally had a beautiful tower that blew off in Hurricane Hazel in 1954. And we have the original drawings of what that tower looked like. It had leaded glass in it with beautiful arches on all four sides. And we're planning to reconstruct that tower just the way it looked originally. This is the connecting walkway the passengers used originally to get from the train station out to the tracks. So this will all be refurbished. We have done paint conservation on this building. We know exactly what the original paint colors look like, so we're going to put those back. It's a process where we get a guy out here with a little razor blade, scrapes paint samples from all over the building. He probably took 300 or 400 samples. He takes them back to his lab and he looks at them under a microscope. He scrapes some more, and he's able to determine, this is an amazing process, able to determine exactly what colors of paint were used every time this building was painted in the last 100 years. And there's a nationally recognized system of paint colors called the Munsell system, and it's used by preservationists all across the United States, and that establishes exactly the color ranges and the color types for every paint in this building, and they're numbered by, and they each have a number. So we can go back through the Munsell numbering system and put back the colors that were used interior and exterior here, just like in 1909. This is kind of a unique spot where I'm standing right now because this building originally had a coal-fired boiler, and so when they delivered coal to this building, there was a hatch right here. And you lift off that hatch, dump the coal down in here. So right where I'm standing right now, right underneath my feet, there is a room where the coal would be collected. The boiler was right back in here. I'll show you where the chimney was when we go back inside. You'll actually be able to see the boiler room on the inside of the building. But there's actually a room down underneath here that was used to hold the coal. Down here on this wing, you can see some damage to the wall, and we were told it was either a truck or a forklift that accidentally backed into that wall a number of years ago. But we have the original drawings, so we'll be able to put that back with the original windows, just like it looked originally. When this building was originally built in 1909, there were special brick shapes fabricated for different locations in the building. Here's one right here. This is a corner shape for the plinth that this pier rests on. There are stretcher shapes that have the same profile as the corner shape. Those are very interesting, I think. These were all fabricated out of poured concrete. Over here on the building wall, we have other special shapes like this one right here that were made to make these window surrounds, including the beautiful work at the top of the window frame. And we know a brick maker who can make those for us for this particular project. So we're going to put that back exactly like it looked originally. This is one of the original wood brackets that held up the eave on all sides of the building. And we've had to put in some temporary steel brackets to hold up that roof. The original wood brackets have been salvaged and are stored in the metal storage building. And we have these that we can use to make replicas. We've got about 3 or 4 places where the brackets were missing. So we're going to fabricate new ones out of new timber wood for those places where they're missing, but all of the original brackets will be restored and put back out of storage back into use on this building. And that's an example of what an original bracket looked like. Now this is also kind of a unique spot. This is where horses and buggies, if you had to make a pickup directly from the train itself, you could drive a horse and buggy through here originally. Personally, I think it's really cool that when this building was built in 1909, I'm sure they had some mechanical devices, but horses and mules helped to build this building in 1909, which I think is very interesting. We're going to make the whole building handicap accessible. Again, this wing is about 18 inches lower than that wing. You can see the difference in the floor elevations right here. Right underneath where we're standing, we're actually going to excavate all this down and create a new basement right down underneath our feet that'll be used for new mechanical equipment for heating and cooling the whole building. So we're going to take advantage of this available space down below to put in all that equipment. Once we come back after that's done and pour a new sidewalk in here, it'll be elevated so that this building and that wing, as well as the other wing down there, will end up on the same floor elevation with ramps. And they'll all be wheelchair accessible. Okay. This end of the building in 1909 was originally used for the processing of U.S. mail from Goldsboro out to the trains and north and south from here. And you can actually see that there was a door right here. And if you look at the way that the boards are noted in the ceiling right there, there was actually a little room right here with a counter. And you can see where the counter was right there on the wall. So the person could come in with the U.S. mail, come up to the counter, give it to the postmaster, process it, and would go out that way onto the trains. So it was actually a little sort of a vestibule right here where the mail customers could come in and process their mail. When we complete our project here, we're planning to have that whole side of the building become a serving kitchen, and we'll also have a recycling room at that end of the building. There'll be a building manager's office in that corner, and right where I'm standing now will be a small conference room that can be shared with the activities that go on in the main room. You can see there's a big hole in the floor here. When Goldsboro Builder Supply was here, they accidentally overloaded the floor with bags of cement, and some of that cement can still be seen down there, and it caused that floor to collapse. And so we're going to have that repaired. All this floor is actually going to come out, and we're going to start over with a new floor in this area of the building. These steel pipes that you see fastened to the wall and fastened to the floor, we thought were a good interim safety measure, because when the wind blows on that wall, it applies force to the wall. The slab used to take up some of those forces, but since the slab's not here right now, we've got these temporary steel pipes in here to help resist wind load on that wall of the building. Okay? You can see there's a couple of windows here that are missing. We still got parts of their frames, but there are enough other windows in the building that we could use as a model to construct the new windows that will go into those openings. Okay? This is my favorite room in the building. We call this the Grand Hall. This is where the rail passengers used to wait for the trains in 1909 and thereafter. And you could also imagine in World War I and World War II, there were a lot of troops that went through this building to serve our country. And just tell you a few things about this room. Again, we're going to be painting it with all the original paint colors. The red ochre color that you see on the wall is original there. That's what we're going to put back. The terrazzo floor in here will be cleaned up. It's a beautiful gray and red pattern. There is a temporary steel and wood mezzanine that you see goes all the way around this room. That was put in by Goldsboro Builder Supply as a place to store things that they sold, and that will all come out. We've left it in here temporarily to give us a working platform to get up onto to take measurements and so forth. At this end of the building, again, this is where the white passengers would wait for the trains. The door on the right here went into the men's restroom. The door on the left over here by that temporary stair went into the women's parlor, and then the women's parlor went into the women's restroom. Okay? And this area right here was the original ticket booth where African American and white passengers both could buy tickets. And you can see from the pattern in the floor that there was actually a counter that protruded out into this room. I'll tell you a little bit about this room. This is another one of my favorite rooms. This is a room over here where we think it functioned as a newsstand, and they used to sell candy and confectionaries and so forth out of that room. So we call that the candy room now. And so the candy room had actually a counter that came out from the wall, and we think it was round because you can actually, it's hard to see, but you can actually still see it somewhat in the floor. And so the salesman from the candy room would stand here to be able to sell to customers on this side and that side. There was a dividing railing or wall that was low between this candy room counter and the ticket counter that physically separated the black passengers from the white passengers. And right where this lady's standing right here, there was a drinking fountain. And y'all have been told about segregated drinking fountains for whites and blacks. That's what they had here. And, you know, I've been down in that crawl space, and I'll just tell you the supply water and the wastewater was exactly the same for the blacks and the whites, so, you know, go figure. Now, down at this end of the room was a male restroom for the African-American males, and there was a female restroom there for the African-American females. And if you come up here, you can actually look down and see this whole area of the building over here has a full basement underneath it, and that's where the boiler room was originally. We were talking about that room on the outside where the coal was stored, right out there. Okay, so they shovel the coal over to the boiler. You can see the chimney right back over here. We'll be putting this building back in our project with all the modern day conveniences of heating and air conditioning. There will be a fire protection sprinkler system. There'll be a PA system, all new plumbing, mechanical, and electrical wiring and so forth. And again, the whole building will be made handicapped accessible. And I think once this room is completed, it'll be very ornate and just be gorgeous. So this will be the main meeting room for the reuse of this building as a conference center. There's, of course, a proposal for in the future, probably 10 years from now, to have this building, once train traffic's been reestablished between Goldsboro and Raleigh, this building will function as a train station again. This room will be a train passenger waiting room again in about 10 years. And right down at that far end of the room is where the DOT is planning to put their ticketing counter rather than use the old ticket booth. But again, as I mentioned before, at that end of the building we're going to have a big kitchen, so they'll be able to prepare food and bus it in here and serve it to folks that might be here for a banquet, for example, or a wedding reception. And so this room will have a multi-purpose function. We're up here on the second floor, and this is an area that's going to be refurbished into offices, and some of which will be used by City of Goldsboro staff, and there may be others that could be rented out to private companies. And this area was originally constructed as a double-loaded corridor, as you can see, and the railroad company in 1909 originally hoped to use this for offices for their company, but what happened in reality was only a couple of the rooms down at that far end of the building actually were finished so that they could be used as offices, and the rest of it stayed like this at the time it was originally built. This building has a timber truss frame right here that clear spans the grand hall below, and you notice that there were no columns holding up the roof or the ceiling in the grand hall. That's because these trusses right here span from one outside wall to the other and carry all the roof load away from the center of the building. And you can see they're constructed of timbers with steel rods here. And there's actually a steel nut and washer right there, and you can see the same thing on that side. We're planning to refinish the wood floors. There's some of the original wood floors are still here, and some of the subfloors on that side, so you can see the difference between the subfloor and the original wood floor. Right back here was where the tower was located originally. So all these rooms up here, all these spaces up here are going to be refinished with beaded woodboard paneling and ceilings, just like they looked in 1909. Painted again with original colors that we could find from these rooms down at that end. We're actually going to take up all of the floor and the subfloor on this level so that we can get into the ceiling cavity above the ceiling of the first floor, and that'll enable us to have a big open area where the contractor can run electrical wiring and fire protection sprinkler pipes for the sprinkler heads and wiring for the sound system and so forth. And then all this original flooring will be salvaged, refinished, and put back here. So we're going to try to keep everything that we've got. The slab that I'm standing on right now, and there's a couple other pieces over there against that wall, we think actually came off of the tower when it fell in Hurricane Hazel. Seemed to us from the evidence we could find here that the tower actually fell that direction when the wind blew in Hurricane Hazel. And so these pieces here that I'm standing on are actually going to be salvaged, reused, and put back on the tower, just like they were originally. Again, we've got a huge attic up here where we're going to have all of our new heating and air conditioning equipment concealed, so that all of these modern day improvements to the greatest extent possible are going to be hidden away. But we've got lots of space up there to run ductwork and so forth to serve the heating and cooling needs on this level. Again, there's a big crawl space down under the first floor, so all the ductwork that provides heating and cooling for the first floor will be down there. And so the amount of modern day improvements in the historic fabric of the building will be very minimal in terms of what you can actually see in the public areas of the building. I mean, if you go up in the attic or the basement, you'll be able to see all this new stuff, but in general for the public, it'll have its original historical appearance. Any questions?
Elevator.
Yes. Yes, that's a good question. There will be an elevator down here at this corner of the building, and it will go from the basement all the way up to this floor. And we're actually going to excavate some of the earth in the crawl space to create a room in the basement big enough for storing tables and chairs. So we'll move the tables and chairs up and down on the elevator to the Grand Hall so it can be used for events. You know, and some of the events in the Grand Hall will be stand-up events where you don't need tables and chairs, and some of them may need tables and chairs, so we've got to have a place to store all that stuff. And so that'll be down in the basement off of the elevator. That's a great question. Thank you. I forgot about that. The other thing I wanted to mention was this project's going to include work on the site around the station. We're going to reestablish the loop drive here at the front of the station, create a large parking area down at this end. We will have an underground cistern that will collect roof water, and that roof water will be pumped and piped back into the building to flush toilets, and also it will be used to run the irrigation system to water the grass and the plants that are all around the building. Now, the other thing that we plan to do is we're planning to refurbish and do a streetscape project on all the blocks surrounding the train station. So that'll be Carolina Street, Georgia Street, Mulberry, and Chestnut. And the work here for refurbishing the streets and the streetscape landscape work will actually extend 2 blocks up Walnut to George Street towards downtown. So this whole part of downtown, this whole neighborhood will be reaping the benefit of this train station project ultimately, because the streets will be spruced up in addition to the building.